Long ago, Dionysus was wandering the lands of ancient Greece when he came to the shores of the Aegean Sea, and there he saw sitting upon a rock a goat-footed satyr, young and lithe and beautiful. His red gold locks, kissed and blessed by the sun, almost set to brilliant radiant gold by the light of the sun shining through, like a coronet of golden fire dancing about the youth's head, and down the length of his slim body to his hairy, shaggy goat legs, which were of like colour to his hair, and seemed again to catch the sunlight and be like fire about his legs. The blackened hooves shone, if blackness can be said to shine, in a dark, rich, lustrous colour. And the heart of Dionysus stirred, the way it so often did, and he fell madly in love with Ampelos, and rushed over to introduce himself. And when the satyr looked up from his rock and saw the dark, the swarthy, the Byronic Dionysus looking down at him, well, he too fell madly in love. And these two beings of the ancient world danced up a tune for the next several months. Throughout that summer they played and they made love, they played music, they danced, they rejoiced, they drank deep of the joys of life. Nothing was too much for them, but every minute in each other's company very nearly. And one day they decided to venture up a hillside, up to the very top of the hill, where they could look out upon the forests below them. By the time they got up the hill, and they'd drunk a little of spring water, and they'd sampled the food they'd brought with them, they'd danced, they'd made passionate love, they'd slept, they'd woken, they played music, they sang songs. It had grown to twilight, and the moon, distant seen, was rising in the sky, casting a silvery glow over everything. And from the woods there came lumbering a herd of cattle, huge and cumbersome beasts, gentle though, a great herd of cows and the bull with them. And these beasts, reaching the top of the hill, paying little heed to Dionysus or Ampelos, lay down upon the grass and fell into a deep sleep, as was their habit night after night upon the hill of the cows. By this time, spirits were high, spirits were flying, and Ampelos suggested to Dionysus that they should ride in majesty down the hillside, ride to yonder village and see what was on offer at the taverna. And they looked at the assorted cows and decided that the most magnificent beast, the most suitable steed to ride in dignity, bearing in mind they were a few sheets to the wind by this point, that the best beast to ride was the bull himself. And so they took twigs and thwacked at the bull until the poor old thing woke up, lumbering to its four hooves, mooing and yawning to itself, and on to its back leapt Dionysus, on to its back leapt Ampelos, and they geed the beast up, and it began to lumber with mooing and protesting down the hillside, down to the path that led eventually to the taverna, a mile or so away. And all of the while the two lovers were singing and calling and jeering and telling each other dirty jokes and having a ribald time, until young Ampelos looked up at the moon, casting its silvery glow upon the white skin of the bull, making it look like something wondrous and magical, and said, "Are we not the greatest pair? Am I not the king of the hill, the king of the mound? Am I not the most handsome satyr in the world? I should be the king of the satyrs. Look, see my magnificent cow. I am more potent, more powerful, more handsome, more majestic than any of the gods. Even distant Selene cannot attain to my majesty," which is not a wise thing to say. And even Dionysus groaned a little at the silliness of his companion to say such a thing when distant Selene and the other gods are listening. And Selene was not amused, for they were her herd of cows, her bull that was being ill-ridden down to the taverna and treated as a mere beast, a burden instead of a sacred animal. And all of these shouts and jeers, this arrogance from this silly satyr, well, it was all a little bit too much for the aloof and distant goddess. But she is not like Zeus. She did not send a lightning bolt to strike the goat-footed beastie down. Nor is she like Poseidon to shake the earth with earthquakes and cause great buildings to topple upon the satyr's head and cracks to open up and devour his corpse. Nor is she like Demeter to curse the satyr with disfigurements and plagues and boils. No. She's sent to deal with this most egotistical of youths from the darkness up above, a tiny, 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 tiny little gadfly that flew down and down and down and landed not upon the satyr, not upon Dionysus, but upon the bull, and began to bite and bite and bite at the bull, jabbing it here and there in its tenderest parts until the poor beast reared up, snorting and furious and wild, and shook off the two riders. Dionysus went one way, Ampelos went the other, cracking his skull against the trunk of a tree. And the bull turned tail and roared and thundered and ran back the way it had come, back up to the hill, back up to the rest of the herd, where it fell into a deep sleep and forgot all of the bites that had been delivered upon it. And the gadfly flew back up to where it had come from. Dionysus shook the dust from himself, got back to his feet, and called to Ampelos, and only then saw the angle of the young man's neck, where he had smashed into the tree, cutting open his head and snapping his neck. And the blood dripped to the earth, dripped into the roots of the elm tree under which he had died. Well, Dionysus ran to the corpse and cradled it. He wept and he wailed as only gods may. He imprecated to Zeus, to Hades, to all of the Olympians to do something to bring Ampelos back. But what is dead is dead, and Hades will part with no life. And Selene, her distant courses, was indifferent to the weeping of Dionysus. But if he could not bring the dead to life, he could do what so many other gods of Olympus have done. Not restore life, but to transform life into something else. And seeing the blood of his beloved seeping into the roots of the tree, he reached out a divine hand and touched the blood, and muttered spells known only to the Olympians. And from the bloodstain there grew a green shoot which began to stretch up at a most alarming speed and grew around and around the trunk of the tree, stretching up into the branches of the tree, unfurling itself through the hours of the night, as Dionysus, tears streaming down his face, sat and watched what his beloved was becoming, until by the time the dawn broke, the leaves of the plant had unfurled, great leaves, great abundances of leaves, and then eventually had come the fruit of this new plant, great heavy clusters of rich, succulent purple fruit. Dionysus plucked one and ate it, and knew that it was good. For Ampelos had become the very first grapevine to enter the world, and whilst people had made alcohol for 1,000 years from many other plants, for the first time as Dionysus tasted the grape, tasted the juice of his beloved, he knew that not only would this be a great fruit to eat, but fermented. He knew with the genius that only a god has that distinguishes the divine from the mortal, that this could be fermented and transformed. This could become a wine of communion, something to imbibe the very spirit, the very essence of Ampelos. So whilst he might never again hold Ampelos in his arms, see that beautiful satyr stretched out before him, Dionysus knew that by drinking the wine in sufficient quantities, even the spottiest and most unattractive of youths would eventually start to look as beautiful as Ampelos, be possessed by the spirit of Ampelos, if only until sobriety kicked back in.